Pep Guardiola's Barcelona is one of the strongest teams in the history of football, both in the way they play and their results. They have won every title possible and broken many records, and all thanks to one man, who is Pep Guardiola. So much so that at the time FC Barcelona was full of legends, but everyone nicknamed this team Pep Guardiola's Barça. But overnight, in April 2012, Guardiola announced his departure from FC Barcelona, a decision that shocked everyone and no one knew why. But as the years went by, the reasons began to become clearer and clearer, because there wasn't just one reason why he left, but several, and that's what we're going to find out in this video, so keep watching until the end. To fully understand the reasons for Guardiola's departure, you need to know what the situation was at Barcelona at the time. I mean, to understand why he left, you need to know what happened behind the scenes and how it all started. Because it started with something simple and built up to other things. His first disagreement was with the administration, because Guardiola's period at Barcelona began in 2008, and it was Juan Laporta who signed him, of course after being recommended by Johan Cruyff, who was serving as honorary president of Barcelona. So Guardiola began his work and everything is going well, and he has all the support of the president and Cruyff. But after the elections in 2010, the members of the club voted for Sandro Rosell as the new president of the club by more than 60%. And that's not all. Immediately afterwards, Cruyff resigned from his position because he felt that no one would respect him after the arrival of Rosell. And the problem is that Rosell then said, the position of honorary president has no role in the club, and if I were in his place, I would also resign. And from there, it all started, because all those who supported Guardiola, they left, and he was alone, especially as it was at the time that the club's financial problems began, because as we know, what's happening at Barcelona today is the result of failures that happened years ago, and it didn't start during Russell's time, but Laporta handed the clubs over to him, which was already suffering, and so Guardiola wanted new players, but the club told him they couldn't because of the crisis. But Guardiola didn't understand that because of his lack of experience at the time, especially if you know Guardiola, you know very well that he wants to control everything. I mean, if he doesn't like a player, he won't trust until he leaves, and if he likes a player on the market, he has to sign him, and that's what he's been doing at Man City so far. But he hasn't found this in Barcelona at the time, and after that he didn't just have problems with the president and other members, but even with the players. For example, in this period, Piqué had just gotten into a relationship with Shakira and become not focused on the field. And the same thing happened with Dani Alves, where he saw that his behavior changed over time and is no longer disciplined, and also accused Cesc Fabregas that he leaked informations to Real Madrid. So much so that even Messi, who doesn't create problems, he had problems with him, where one day Pep Guardiola was giving a speech to the players in the dressing room, and Messi interrupted him to order Pepsi. But Guardiola said that no player should drink this type of drinks before the match. But Messi challenged him and got up and brought the drink and drank it next to all the players. But this quarrel with Messi was contained over time. But Guardiola asked the club to sell the other three players. I mean Piqué, Dani Alves, and even Fabregas, who arrived the same year. But the club refused, saying that the club's situation could not afford to sign players on the same value. But Guardiola did not swallow this refusal, especially since Laporta spoiled him. I mean, he did whatever he wanted. For example, in 2009, they bought Ibrahimovic for a huge sum, and when he had problems with Guardiola, they get rid of him immediately after a year. And then they signed David Villa for a large sum, and that didn't happen with Russell. But Guardiola denied all this, and instead he claimed that in his last year, he noticed that he had given away all his ideas, and that he had nothing new to add at Barcelona. Barcelona. And also the players in that period won everything, and so he felt that the players no longer had something to motivate them, and entered a kind of repetitive routine. He had the impression that he was repeating the same words without the players reacting, and through lack of experience at the time, he didn't know that this was a normal thing. All the players go through periods like this, especially at the end of the season, and after the summer break, their energy is renewed. Not to mention that Mourinho accelerated the pace of Guardiola's departure due to the large number of press statements, as we all know that Mourinho is the strongest in terms of provocations in statements to the press, and this was confirmed by Piqué afterwards, when he said, "There are many reasons that made Guardiola leave, but among them was certainly Mourinho, because he was too much for Guardiola."
There was a moment where the press was focusing on what was happening outside of the pitch.
Especially as that year Barcelona won almost nothing, as well as being eliminated by Chelsea in the Champions League semi-finals, and losing La Liga to Real Madrid after losing the Clásico. Everyone thinks that's the only reason, because it all happened in about a week. On April 21st, he lost the Clásico, which announced that Real Madrid were going to win the league because of the points difference between them. And it was the same Clásico that Cristiano did the Calma celebration. And on April 21st, that's 3 days later, he was knocked out of the Champions League. And on April 27th, he announced his departure, which means all that in 1 week. This shows one thing, which is that because of his inexperience at the time, he couldn't come to the conclusion that all clubs go through difficult years, which is normal, but also he didn't accept defeat. So it's possible that he left before he was sacked, because he thought it was a bad season, and if he repeats the same results the following season, he will be considered a failure, because we all know that Guardiola is someone who doesn't accept defeat and doesn't want to destroy what he's built, especially as he's achieved everything. And in fact, everything was too much for him, because when he announced his leaving, he said, "Coaching Barcelona is very difficult, and I need a rest from that, because to play games every week, you have to be strong, and it even consumes the time you can spend with your family, and you need a lot of energy to do this job, and my energy has been drained over these 4 years." In other words, Pep Guardiola was exhausted and needed a rest. But in my opinion, yes, coaching Barcelona is very difficult, but even Guardiola's mentality contributed to that. Because when you want everything to be perfect, over time you explode. So we can conclude that what pushed Guardiola to leave was not just one reason, but several, because a single reason is not enough to leave a club that was the strongest at that time. But despite his short period, which did not exceed 4 years, he built a team that was the reason why so many people fell in love with football.